Hi, my name is Randy Curran. I live in Bowie's Creek, North Carolina. I'm 62 years old, and I had a stroke 2 years ago that left me totally dependent on other people for any functions of daily life. And I had read articles about hyperbaric oxygen therapy benefiting stroke victims, and so I spent probably 3 or 4 months trying to find somewhere I could get that done. And I found a clinic in California and a clinic in Charlotte, and then I contacted the hospitals in the area that have them, and almost all of the major hospitals around here have them, but their response was all that they had no interest or willingness to even consider hyperbaric oxygen therapy for treatment of me as a stroke victim. And I said, look, I'll sign a letter releasing you of all responsibility and, accepting whatever the outcome is as my own doing. And still there's no interest whatsoever. And then fortunately I was able to find Carolina Hyperbaric here in Raleigh, which was great because I couldn't get to the clinic in California. I was so disabled. And came for 40 days for 40 treatments spread out pretty much one a day, 5 days a week, an hour at a time. And it was wonderful. Of course, what I was hoping for was that after just a handful of treatments, I'd be able to run down the hallways here, as opposed to just limp along like the handicapped person that I was. And I went through 40 treatments and didn't have any, obvious miracles in that regard that I was looking for. I was a little discouraged, but not tremendously discouraged, because I was grateful just to be alive and not a quadriplegic. And so at the end of the 40 days, Sarah had said, we normally recommend that people take a break from 2 weeks to 2 months at the end of the first series of treatment, and then think about whether they want to come back for another step. Excuse me. During that period of time, friends at church would always say, "You're looking so much better." And that wasn't why I was here. I didn't consider this was the health spa. I was coming for results. And yet, every Sunday, people would come up and say, "You're really looking great. You're really looking better than you did last Sunday." So I was inclined to come back for another series of treatments. And then one day, one of my best friends said, "Are you going to go back?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I haven't seen any major improvements in my walking that I was hoping to." And he said, "Well, I'll tell you where the major improvements have been." And I said, "Where's that?" And he said, "In your speech." He said, "You used to not be able to carry on a conversation. You'd have pauses of 2 or 3 or 5 seconds when we would talk about something. It's like you were mentally having trouble trying to process the subject matter." And he said, "Now you can talk without interruptions and have normal, intelligent conversations." And he said, "That's a major improvement in my mind." And then I had a couple of other people tell me the same thing. And so I figured, well, there were benefits that I had not noticed or been aware of, but that seemed pretty dramatic in the overall scheme of things. So came back for another series of 40. And after the third session in that second series, one afternoon at home after the morning session, I found that as if a switch had been flipped, I was able to walk around the house almost normally, as opposed to having to hold on to my wife Sandy to move 6 inches and stay upright. And I was so excited that I just walked all around the house, back and forth, just totally thrilled and thanking the Lord for every step I was able to take independently. And the next morning I got up and my walking was not as good as it had been the prior afternoon. But again, that afternoon after morning treatment, the walking switch flipped back on, and I was able to walk almost normally. And that happened for like 3 days, and I was just ecstatic about that, because that's what I've been hoping and praying for all along. And after 3 or 4 days of that, partial improvements or temporary improvements, they stopped coming back, and I started to get a little agitated about that. And then they came back again. I was able to walk again before Thanksgiving. The switch flipped on, and we had lots of family and friends coming over, and I was able to go for about 3 days with no reduction in my walking ability, but with the positive abilities that had been coming and going now weren't going anymore. So that was totally exciting, and that finally faded away, but I never got as handicapped as I had been. And so my experience the second time through was I'd have these peaks in walking ability, and then they would dip down to valleys, and the valleys kept getting less low or less deep, and the peaks kept getting higher and lasting longer. And this is my 80th session right now, and a couple of days ago the switch flipped on again, and for this whole week I've been able to maneuver pretty much independently, and very thrilled and grateful for that. And now I'll take some time off, as had been suggested the first time through, and decide whether to come back and do another round of treatment or not. But I can definitely say there were major improvements in a number of different areas, and the staff is great. Sarah was always eager and willing to answer questions, or when she didn't know the answer, to find out the answers. And so, people here have just been wonderful and very supportive and encouraging, and it's just been a great experience, and makes me more frustrated at all the hospitals that turned me down and said, no, we won't do it. And I had my cardiology doctor told me that he had heard one of the local hospitals charge $1,600 an hour for treatment for wound healing for their chamber, and certainly this is much more reasonably priced and affordable. And so everything about Carolina Hyperbaric and the people here has been wonderful, and the results have been exciting, and I won't say exceeded my expectations, but met them, and I had high expectations, so that part is just wonderful. So now I think I'm going to go eat a big lunch to celebrate 80 sessions. Just make sure you put it on Fox News, and broaden your mind at the same time that you're undertaking the oxygen. And so anyway, that's my story.
Thank you.
And I'm sticking to it.